Hello and welcome back to the konsultek Technology Cafe. Today we're going to be discussing business continuity and disaster recovery, a topic that remains hot in our industry. This is part one of a two-part series. It's titled The Disaster Waiting to Happen, the 4 biggest mistakes people make and why they cost so much. So when we talk about business continuity and disaster recovery, we should probably begin with some definitions as to exactly what do those terms mean. So when we're speaking about business continuity from an IT perspective, we're really talking about an organization's ability to keep vital business operations or processes running at or near normal capacities in the event of infrastructure failure. Now this is similar to, but stands in stark contrast to disaster recovery. So when we're going to talk about disaster recovery and use that term, we're really talking about referring to incidents that significantly impact or make unavailable critical infrastructure. The most common examples are natural disasters, things that people lump into that category of acts of God. So you have business continuity, talking about an interruption of service, but not a wholesale disaster, and then disaster recovery, really dealing with some of those larger catastrophic failures. So when we look at what is one of the common mistakes that people make when they begin to evaluate or develop a business continuity plan, it's really this: focusing on the technology first and the business processes second. Now that may seem odd coming from a technology company, but bear with me because it makes a lot of sense. Go back to the definition of business continuity. What we really want to do is keep those business processes up and running at or near full capacity. So in order to really develop an effective BCDR plan, we really need to make sure that we go out and walk amongst the business units. Find out what are the priorities. Find out what processes absolutely must survive at all costs, which can go down for a short period of time, and what processes can go down for hours, perhaps in some cases even days. So the main thing, and the mistake I'd like you to avoid, is to think about BCDR from the confines of the server room and not get out amongst all the various stakeholders. Those could be employees, they could be customers, they could be people who interface with various aspects of your technology, both internally and externally, but that's who you really need to speak with, and that's where you start to build the plan. Because in the end, hardware and appliance solutions must effectively support business processes. Otherwise, they just don't make sense economically, and they won't make sense when it really comes time to when you need them, which is when things already are going wrong. So the second mistake that we see very often are folks focusing on the wrong causes of business continuity and disaster recovery type problems. And so I want to share with you some very, very interesting numbers that come from our friends at Strategic Research Corporation. When they started to analyze the leading causes of BCDR incidents, here's what they found. 44% are caused by hardware failures, things such as servers, disk drives, switches, and other core infrastructure type components. 32%, that's right, 32% caused by human error. So really have nothing to do with the technology per se, but are really relates to the operators, to the people using the equipment. A lot of times it's a mistake in the configuration setting, or issuing the wrong command on a production system, it happens more frequently, as you might expect, right after new hardware or new systems have been installed. Next on the list are software and firmware errors. Now these failures often relate to operating system errors, things like driver incompatibilities and the introduction of new applications to servers that contend for resources in ways that may not have been understood before the software or firmware was added to the system. 7% are due to virus or security type breaches. As you know, in today's world, malicious attacks do happen, and so you need a solid security plan to make sure that you deal with these things. But again, keep in mind, although this is on the rise and it's very important to deal with, we're now at 7% of all causes of BCDR incidents. And then last on the list, just 3% have been found to be caused by natural disaster. So typically when you speak to someone about BCDR, what flashes through their mind, or what undoubtedly comes up in conversation, is the risk management perspective of the disaster recovery piece. And yet, as I mentioned previously, only 3%, that's right, just 3% of all BCDR incidents come from the natural disaster, from those big cataclysmic events, which are sexy and people like to talk about them and they're exciting. But the fact of the matter is this: 70 to 90% of all system outages are due to planned downtime. That's right, planned downtime. 70 to 90% of all outages are caused by planned downtime. So what I'm going to suggest to you is this: when you look at developing a BCDR plan, you really need to turn things upside down and look at the fact that how are you going to deal with the 70 to 90% of the planned outages? How are you going to deal with the 7 to 25% that come from unplanned downtime? How are you going to prevent that? And then finally, of course it's important, you want to plan for the natural disaster end of the world. But you really need to look at your systems and how you're going to maintain uptime day in and day out. And a lot of times that really isn't considered to be part of the BCDR plan, but I want to emphasize that it's an absolute must that you look at that and have that as part of your plan. What I recommend you do now is this: download the white paper titled "The Disaster Waiting to Happen: The 4 Biggest BCDR Mistakes People Make and Why They Cost So Much." Thanks again for joining us at the cafe today. We'll look forward to your next visit. Bye now.